everybody, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to be working on my old Atlas lathe here. It's built probably around 1930, something like that, so it's pretty old. And the other day I was using it and I managed to break apart on my tailstock. There's a bolt that goes through here and you tighten that down and that stops the tailstock from moving. In the middle of my bolt there, you can see here that, if we can focus on that, the threads are all worn away here. So you spin that nut down and it just spins around. It's been stripped off. So what I'm going to do is make a new one of these bolts. It's got a square end on it. So I can't nick down the hardware and buy a square-ended bolt. I know that's a 3/8 thread and the pitch is 16 teeth per inch, which probably makes it UNC because this lathe is, I think, originally designed in America. So it's not going to be English threads, they're going to be American threads, which would be UNC, 16 teeth per inch, and the thread angle is 60 degrees, not 55, which is how the English used to make them in those days. Rather than make it out of mild steel, I found myself an old bolt, not a lot unlike that one, and I turned down, or I've already turned it down to 3/8 diameter all the way along. The problem is without my tailstock, I can't put a center in the end of it and hang on to it like this because it's just too flexy. What I had to do was hang on to it here with the head of the bolt up inside the chuck and turn this half down. Then I turned it around, held on to it here and went in with a grooving tool or a longer tool and channeled it out. So it's actually 2 diameters there, but you can hardly see where I've matched them up and it won't matter anyway. So that makes this nice strong steel because it used to be a bolt. It's not some piece of random bar that I found at the scrapyard. So the next step is going to be to put a thread on here and then I'm going to mill that down to make it into a square, same size as the other one. Now to make a 16 teeth per inch thread, you'll notice this lathe doesn't have a quick change gearbox on it. It'd be there if it had one. This little lever here is just to go forward and reverse on the lead screw. So these gears here link the lead screw to the spindle, and what I put on these little axles here determines what the pitch is. There are ways to calculate what gears to use, but this lathe has got a chart stuck to the inside of the cover there. That cover's normally round on there, so that has been there for the machine's whole life. And you get a box of gears if you've still got all the original stuff with it that lets you set pretty much any pitch you like. There's ways to cut metric threads, but that's for another lesson. So I'll read the fine print here, figure out what needs to go on there, and I might give you a quick demo on how to put them on, but I won't bore you with that, so please stand by. Okay, we've got the gears on here. The lead screw, which is on the end of this gear, is 8 teeth per inch, and we want the spindle to turn twice for every turn of the lead screw. That means we'll get divided by 2, so we'll end up with 16 teeth. This tooth is a 64 tooth gear, and this gear is also a 64 tooth gear, so they're 1 to 1, doesn't make any difference. This one up here is a 32 tooth gear, so that one's going to turn twice for every time these turn once. These two are both the same, so it doesn't matter what they are, they're not going to change the mix at all. So all you do then, once you've got these on here and running nice and free, you don't want them too tight or anything like that, you just lift that up and do a nut up in the back there that holds it in there, and that engages all your gears. I can't do that without standing in front of the camera, so you'll have to take my word for it. Okay, next we're going to put a little groove in the back there so I've got somewhere to stop my thread. A bit of oil on that as well. just need to go deep enough to relieve the thread. I've got somewhere to stop. That ought to do. Now I've used a radius tool on there, whether you can see that. That way there's no sharp edges for things to shear off at, because that's where they like to shear off at. Next we'll get my screw cutting tool in there. This little gadget's called a screw cutting gauge, and this side, I think I get it running the right way, this side is where they cut the English threads. They're called Whitworth, and the angle is 55 degrees, and this side is 60 degrees, and that's for American threads and metric threads. So what you do with that is when you're grinding up your tool, you'll grind it to fit, make sure I got it the right way around, yeah, grind it to fit that angle, and then you can also use this little gauge to make sure you got your tool set up square. So we'll pop that against the workpiece and then wind the tool in to make sure I've got the tool lined up straight. Looks pretty close. We'll call that good. The other thing we need to check is to make sure it's on centre height. One way of doing that is just to line it up with the centre of the workpiece there where I've already cut it. So with everything done up, I can see that's already on centre height, maybe a smidge below. Good thing about this tool holder is they're easy to adjust. Yep, so that's all right. I'll make sure my lead screw is spinning the right direction. So that's the speed it's going to be heading towards the chuck at. And I want to stop about there each time. I reckon I can do that. A 1/16 of an inch pitch also means your depth is going to be about a 1/16 as well. I've actually forgotten to do something. We set this around at 30 degrees, which is half of the, can't read it that way, half of the included angle of the thread, like that. We'll set that to a 0 there as well. Tighten those up. And we'll spin that around to be square again. Of course we'll need to use that. Pretty good. Try again. So we'll touch that one off there. Set the dial to 0. Now I'm going to go down a 1/16 of an inch, which is the same as the pitch. I'll explain why if somebody ever wants to know. 62.5. So we'll go, say 60 thou depth of cut on this one. So let's just take off 5 thou. to run it out a little bit, but good enough for this purpose. Just to make sure I've got my slow change gears correct on the back there, I got my pitch gauge out. That's the 16 teeth per inch blade. I'll just line it up there against my scratch mark that I just made, and that looks good, so I know I've got the gears right on the end. So we'll come out, come back out, go back into the 0 on the cross feed. We'll take another 5 thou. It shouldn't matter where I engage the lead screw, because the pitch I'm cutting is a direct multiple of the lead screw, so I pretty much can't go wrong. Back to the 0 on that one, give it another couple of thou. Now it's just rinse and repeat, basically. Starting to look like a thread. Now somewhere I've got a nut that I can try on there. Here's one. Starting to go on a little bit, half a turn. A little more. The trick with this stuff is to sneak up on it. Got a sharp edge on the top now. Where's my little spanner gone? I think we'll call that done. So that's going on there. I want it to be a nice tight fit so it doesn't have any slop in it. So next up will be to put a square on the end. I could give it a little file just to take the sharp edge off the top. Yeah, I'll speed it up a little bit. That's good. Yep, that feels better. perfect. And yet I have to make a new nut for it as well, so that I'll use a tap for that. Wrong chuck key. It's that one. So, starting to look like a bolt. Next I'll turn that hexagon into a square. I was going to show you milling the square on the end of the bolt on the milling machine, but I've got a milling attachment for the lathe, so as we're on there already, I'll do it on there. Makes it a bit more about the lathe. And we just take the tool post off, or take the whole compound slide off, which is this gadget here. There's little wedgy things behind these screws that we want to make sure we don't lose. That's the drop test. There we go. So two little pegs go onto that little dovetail there. I haven't already lost them. I'll show you. Oh, there goes one. That's all it is. A little brass pin with a taper on it. And I'll just put my milling attachment on there. This is the milling attachment. Fits on top where the compound slide would usually go. These two bolts screw in here to tighten it up, clamp it in whatever angle you like, and that gives you a third direction of travel. You go up and down, in and out, and along and back. So we'll set this to 90 degrees that way. Should be about there. I will just nip those up. Don't need to clamp the shit out of them. It has these two little bits of flat bar that go in the vise there to protect that. And I've got my ER32 collet block. I've got a four-sided one, and this has got a collet in there that'll fit my bolt. We'll tighten that up in a minute once it's clamped in there with a bit of clearance. You might have seen in the previous shot I had a step in here, and I've just machined that out and left a radius in there, so that'll make it nice and strong. So with that in there, excuse my back while I grab my spanner, somewhere like that. There we go, that's nice and tight now. We're going to hold our cutter in the spindle. We'll just take the chuck off. If I put the back gears in there, like that, should just be able to undo that. I usually like to protect my beds in case I drop the chuck. Don't smash my fingers. This machine's got a number 3 Morse taper up the spindle, and this fellow will go straight in there like that, and that's locked in there. To make sure it doesn't come out, I've just got a drawbar I'll put up the back. This is one I made myself. It's just got a nut on the back and a thread in there that screws into the back of the back of the spindle. Put that on the other way around. That just makes sure that collet chuck can't fall out. Now you could actually use this chuck to hold small work pieces and stuff if you wanted to do accurate work. So it's handy to have. I'll just pick out a cutter. You've got one of these collets for every 1mm size in diameter. You just need to pick one that's slightly bigger or the same size as the thing you're trying to hold. If I tried to hold that straight in the 3-jaw chuck, this is hardened, so that's just going to spin around. With one of these, it's got a lot more surface area. Anyway, so the way you use these, we'll pop that in there first. So that's inside the clipped in there. We pop that on there, making sure it's all nice and clean. Just get them started, please. There we go. Then you can whack that in there, give it a good push in there, and we'll tighten that up. I've still got the back gear in there. There we go, so that's nice and tight. Take the back gears out. Get the bed protector out the way. Let's see how that's looking for speed. Close my guard on the back. That'd be too slow. Let's speed her up a bit. Lathe's got 3 speeds on these pulleys, another 2 here making 6 speeds, and then you've got the back gear that you push in at the back there that I'll give you a demo of one day, making a 12 speed. So for now we'll just take it out of the low speed spindle up here and put it on the high speed one. That should make a big difference. Yeah, that looks better. You always want to be milling against the rotation of the cutter. So we'll go from the front to the back, cutter's turning this way, drop's going that way, pushing against it. The other direction is called climb milling. You don't want to do that. It pulls the work into the cutter and it takes all the slack out of all your slides, causes big bangs. Somewhere about there. We can lock up that one. The finished size is 560 thousandths of an inch. We've gotten 920. We'll say, just say 900. That's about 350 altogether. Divide it by 2, 125. So we'll take 125 off this side, and then we'll spin it around, take the same off the other side, and then that'll be roughing it out, and we'll finish it off after that. Just touching it there. The little mark on my tumbler up there is facing the other way. You see these ones here, how hard these graduations are to read. The lathe used to have these on the cross slide and the compound slide as well. And after watching one of Mr. Pete's videos, I made myself these, which are a whole lot easier to read. So one day if I get bored, I'll make one for the milling attachment. I hardly ever use this thing because I've got a milling machine, but yeah, they're certainly much easier to read, nice big ones like that. There's the 0 there. It's 50 thou. Let's see how much that complains. Not too bad. A bit of a spring cut on the way back. Give it another 50, which is basically one turn. Should be able to do all 4 sides like that just to rough it out. I'll probably speed you guys through it. Now what? Can't see anything loose. We're about 720 there, so I'll take it down to 560 is the finish size. I'll use my calculator for that. Basically the same procedure. Now I've got the square central and both sides should be the same, so I just take my finishing cuts off there, and I'll bring you back when that's done. Alrighty. Okay, we've got a nice square on the bolt now, and I've just knocked the burrs off it. This is the bracket that goes underneath the lathe. I bet that ain't the original. That's something that's been cobbled up in the last 100 years or so. But that goes in there that way, goes in there that way. It's always a bit of a job to get this back together again. That goes in there like that, and the tailstock goes on top of it. And the easiest way to do it is to pick up the tailstock and spy down the hole like that. Being careful not to capture too much crap in between it. I don't drop it. This bolt's a little bit longer than the other one, but it shouldn't hurt. I might make a bigger washer for it one of these days. I will have to make a new nut because the old nut is also a bit razzed, but that'll be for another lesson. So with that one there, you slide along like that. You should be able to just tighten him up and hear no move. So I think we can call that fixed. A little bit more drama than I was expecting, but I think it was good for you guys to see the milling attachment. A lot of people don't know that you can actually mill on a lathe. Wouldn't be doing a whole lot of work on it, but if you're stuck and you need to make a new part, that's a great way to do it. So as usual guys, if you made it to the end, why don't you give us a subscribe, click the like button, and we'll see you on the next one. I can't really see you.